What up, bitches? It is the return of the Car Chronicles, you guessed it. What up? I'm driving to work right now. Currently injured from Muay Thai, again, of course. Failingly growing out the beard. Looking very patchy indeed. I'm just driving to work. Second job, I guess, and I'm feeling fairly lonely. I feel a little alone. I think these days are tough sometimes because I spend a large amount of it around people, but disconnected from everybody. So that, in a lot of ways, amazing. That in some ways makes me feel more alone than if I was just by myself. It's like a lot of people around me, but it's like we're all kind of in our individual bubbles moving past each other. And sometimes that contrast to another person can be the very thing that really accentuates how alone you feel. So, I've been feeling fairly alone today. But I think the tough part is that it doesn't really feel like any person I bring around me, let's say I were to interact with most people right now, it would fill the void, but not really. It's more of just like instead of like a filling, it's like a sheet over the void. So like it looks like it's filled temporarily. It's like it feels like it's not there, but it's not actually being filled. And I think sometimes I don't really know what would fill that void. Maybe it's creativity, maybe it's food, maybe it's nature. I think nature more often than not fills it a lot. I don't know. And I think that void is there very often. I think the more I remove my distractions and my coping mechanisms, the more I experience the howl of the vacuum of emptiness that is kind of within me. And I wonder if it's within everyone. I can't really speak for everyone, but I feel like a lot of, I'm about to go 6 months, no alcohol. No, I'm actually very proud of myself. Best decision I probably have ever made. One of the best decisions I've ever made. And I'm really grateful for the outcomes. I feel like it really well supporting me in the beginning stages of that. So a lot of people ask me, like, what's different now? How do you feel different? Are things better? And I always kind of give this answer that I feel like I'm just more aware. Like, one of the biggest differences is that I'm just more aware of the things that I was sort of distracting myself from. And I think that cutting things out, I've now cut out social media for a while, although I did download it again shortly. And cutting out alcohol on top of other drugs and a lot of other things. I think that what you feel is a sort of hyper-awareness of that void, that emptiness that's within us. I'm going to assume us. I don't know if I'm going to be different than anybody else. Maybe I'm just an extra, which is also possible. But I don't know. From what it seems like a lot of people, everyone who's kind of drug addicted, substance abuse ridden, sort of fast-paced, always distracting, always consuming lifestyle. I think everybody feels this void. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I think that one of the reasons why going on this sort of sobriety journey is extremely difficult, and I mean sobriety in a really comprehensive sense, not just alcohol or other drugs, but I mean really sobriety in terms of the people in your life, becoming sober from the distractions. I think that's another thing I've sort of become sober from. I think I've cut some people out of my life that were sort of distracting me and not really serving me, and me not serving them, honestly, in any beneficial way. Going sobriety from social media, what I'm consuming on a daily basis, which is actually such a fucking big one, because that takes up hours and hours and hours of my time. And any moment in between what I'm doing in which my mind would wander into the void, I can just fill it with the distraction from me that is social media. And it's a really good one because it's always always there all the time, so I really never have to deal with that void ever. And then, alcohol and other drugs really do a really good job of filling that as well. So like, what these drugs really do is like, they make you feel that void right up close and personal. And it's extremely difficult. I would say it's extremely difficult. And ideally, I think the hope is that in feeling it all the time, you will actually do what is necessary to fill it. And by not feeling it, you will never give yourself the opportunity to move through it such that you're able to then feel it and conquer it in the future. That's the hope. And so, yeah, I think the reality is that I'm feeling the void of emptiness that's always kind of within me. And not much has been filling it. And it's scary, and it's difficult and it's tough. But I have hope that, and I have faith that because those two are different. Hope is passive, but faith is active. So I have faith that I will be able to fill it eventually. I don't know what it's going to be though, and how my life is going to have to continue to keep on changing for it to be filled. But I hope it'll be filled eventually. So I think one important question, to ask yourself as you move throughout your life, what are the things that you're using to sort of cover that void? And I'm sure as I watch this, if I watch this at one time in the future, I'm always going to ask myself, what are those things that I'm using? And sometimes you can use them so often that you forget that that's what their function is. And so, yeah, that's kind of a thought I'm having on loneliness. But I think it's good to be aware of it. I think awareness is painful, and ignorance can be blissful. But I think awareness is the only thing that will lead to progress, while ignorance just sort of perpetuates the same cycle over and over. And so you don't actually move forward. It always kind of keeps the same thing going in and out. And that eventually, while it may be bliss in the moment, ceases to be bliss in the future. And that's my philosophy of whether or not ignorance is bliss. But I was literally just sent a message to Gotham just now, talking about filling this void and how this void works with the people in our life. And so as I drive right now to work, I think, often, and, making these is another form of filling the void, right? Whatever it is that you have to distract yourself from not facing that shit, facing that feeling within you, whatever the fuck it is. But on these drives, I think I do a lot of things to fill that void, whether it's listening to music, listening to podcasts, thinking even can be a way of filling the void, weirdly enough. You can just distract yourself with the world of thoughts that you have. But I always like to call people. That's sort of my favorite way to fill the void. And one of the people I used to like to call all the time was Jay. He was someone I really enjoyed calling, and I don't really know what the fuck we would ever talk about, but I at least didn't have to sit with the gnawing of the void just in my ear, fucking there. And so I was just thinking about, what it really, and even my older friends like Karan, or who knows, other people I would like to call this time, my brother, they're not there anymore for me to call. And so I asked myself, what's left? And it's just me. But there's this sort of like sadness, this emptiness when these people leave. And so what I was kind of thinking about is that I was thinking about the idea of someone leaving your life in relation to the concept that my lab is focused on, which is positive and negative affect, also known as just kind of positive and negative emotions. The theory that my lab is based on is that in the brain there's a positive and negative affect system, and that positive and negative emotions aren't on a continuum, but that they are actually separated. Decreasing positive emotions may not necessarily increase decreasing negative emotions might not necessarily increase positive emotions, and increasing positive emotions might not necessarily decrease negative emotions, that they're actually different, which is very different from how we thought about emotions in the past. And so I was thinking about that in relation to people leaving your life, right? So let's say there's someone in your life who's causing a lot of turmoil and a lot of kind of strife, and assuming they're not a family member, you probably have kept them in your life because they bring some level of positivity to you. I think a lot of people have this with friends who they, you know, on the weekends go out and get lit, have a great time with, but they're actually like terrible people. But the positivity that they get to experience on those weekends, or on those times they go out, sort of do a good job of countering the chronic negativity that they bring to their life all the time. And so a lot of times when we cut these people out of our lives, when we remove them from our lives because it's not serving us, we experience a reduction in negative affect or negative emotions. And the thing is that this is not equivalent to an increase in positive emotions. And that's where the fallacy sort of happens. We believe that because we remove them, things are necessarily going to get better. No, they just become less worse. You just experience less negativity, but that's not positivity, right? It's like you could be at -12 and you could come to -4. You're still in the negative numbers. You're not in the positive numbers. It's not positive. It's just a reduction of negative. I mean, I guess eventually it could go to positive, but you get my gist. And so a lot of times what we experience is a reduction in negativity. But what comes along with that, and I think this is why it gets so hard to have these people out of our lives, is that there's also a reduction in positive affect or positive emotions. So what comes along with removing someone from our lives is not only a reduction in negative affect, but a reduction in positive affect as well. I think that can also happen. And so let's say for this example, you know, someone in my life, 8 times out of 10, they're annoying, they're kind of bringing me down, their vibe's not great. Those 2 out of 10 times I'm having a great time when I'm with them, I'm now experiencing the absence of those 2 times. And maybe one is more chronic and more minuscule, but it happens all the time, let's say in the negative affect realm. But I think these positive affect situations, things that boost our positive affect, have a really intense effect on our psyche. And I think that this intense effect is really addictive and really dopamine, euphoria inducing, and a really good way of not having to sort of deal with this void. And so a lot of times when we remove people from our life, we have to understand that we are also going to experience a reduction in the positive things, the positive emotions that this person's presence in our life helped us experience. And so we have to find a way to sort of fill the void that is now left by this person's absence with other things. And a lot of times we don't really fill those things, and we're just kind of left experiencing that space, that vacuum of their presence all the time. And we think, oh, they're gone, you know, the negative things that they brought in my life are gone, so everything should be great now. But no, you still have an absence in the positive things that they brought to your life. And so I guess this is just sort of a kind of way for me to talk to myself without seeming absolutely crazy. But more than that, just an idea that I thought was interesting and really reflects sort of, I think, a way in which we have to approach cutting people out of our lives, because and I don't even like cutting people out of our lives. That language is like weird. I just want to say transitioning into a relationship where you have less or maybe no contact. Because I think once that person's been in your life, you always have some relationship to them, right? It's not like you cut them out of your life. I don't think that's accurate. I just think your relationship transitions. Maybe it goes like 0.0001 contact, but you're still thinking about them. They still affect your life in some way. So let's say you transition to a relationship where you have extremely infrequent contact. Anyways, I think that that plays a big part in transitioning your relationships, and so it's something to be mindful for in the future. And so yeah, then the question becomes, how do I fill this? How do I fill the void within me, and how do I fill the void that's left from these relationships? And I don't know. I think that's really the next thing that I'm going to sort of have to really think about and discover, because I'm just not sure. I think about this week, and you know, things are pretty good right now. I think I'm in a good place, but my experience of my life feels very dull, and I feel sort of depressed. Because I think the times in where you can feel the most depression, I think maybe this is why so many billionaires kill themselves, is when everything is going great objectively, but you don't feel great. Because when everything's going shitty and you don't feel great, it's like, yeah, there's a reason why everything is wrong. And so you can attribute cause, you can attribute meaning to the feelings that you're feeling, and you won't feel like there's a schism between the world and your experience. But when everything is essentially or seemingly great and you don't feel great, that schism is the thing that I feel like really, that's where depression exists. That's the difference between like a sadness and a depression in a lot of ways. And I think that's where shit gets pretty scary, because that's where hope kind of dies out. Because you're just like, well, fuck, if everything is great and I still don't really feel great about these things, like, what's left? There's nothing more. And so that's where things get pretty interesting. And I think that we have to sort of really challenge the idea that everything is great. Because if everything is great, but you don't feel great, I would ask you to get in touch with your values. Because everything may be great for who, objectively? Whose metric of objectivity are we using here? Because chances are everything is not great for you within your own values, within what really matters to you. You're not really living a life that is great to you. You're taking someone else's standards and someone else's metrics of what a great life is, and you're applying that onto yourself. You're completely ignoring your own values about what that is, because you believe that those values are more important than your own because they're propagated by everyone in society. And so you have a ad populum fallacy that you're conforming to all the time, and then you use that to supersede your own inherent intrinsic wisdom of what matters to you. And then you tell yourself that, well, I must not be living it. Well, there's nothing I can do to live a good life because I got everything that is great and I don't feel great. And so really, I think these times are moments where we need to sort of really reassess what a great life looks like for us and really change it up, because I bet that there really is a mismatch between what we inherently feel is, what we inherently want, what we inherently want to be aligned with, and what is going on outside. So yeah, I guess I have to do that. I'm really good at talking about this shit, not too good at like actually doing these things. And so that's kind of where things get kind of difficult, because I don't really know what it means to actually reassess those things. But I can think of one thing. It's like, you know, I'm working 2 jobs right now. Like, you know, I go into a lab and I go into a restaurant. Like, honestly, I don't like doing that shit. And so I guess we're challenged to change the way we think about the situation or change the situation itself. And so, you know, there'd be a lot of people like, oh, well, look, you know, my outside life is not aligned with my values, but I can't change my life because I have to live this way. I have to feed my kids. I have to feed my family. I have to do this because it's a way for me to get into school. I feel you. I'm there with you. And so what I would say to that is, if you can't change the way in which you are literally moving throughout the world, if you cannot change the outside world, you're then forced to change the way in which you're thinking about the situations. And this is where I would say the most abstract and maybe more difficult work. They're both extremely difficult, but I think this work's really difficult because there's no like genuine metrics of change that you can use unless you like externalize everything onto like paper or something. It's just all internal work. And then so the question then becomes, what internal tools can we use to change the way in which we feel about the external world, such that there's no longer a mismatch between it and our internal values? Good question. That will be for another video. But I will say one tool that I think is extremely powerful is sound corny, you hear it everywhere, but it's fucking important. It's gratitude. And gratitude is a very interesting concept because I think it's a sort of a mental simulation where you have to like put yourself into a situation where things could be worse, and it's a very like imaginative experience where things could be worse, and you have to understand that they're better. But because the reality is that no matter what you ask for in life, your brain will eventually habituate it, no matter how good it is, and it will become dull and boring. You have to find ways to sort of always reinvigorate the experience of what you're doing. And because we can't, bring constant novelty in things. We have to bring constant novelty to our thoughts. And so that is where the practice of gratitude gets extremely important. So I'll end this shit because it's 20 minutes, but I would just say that, yeah, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to, kind of build up my finances, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be in such a chill, relaxed, calm, and beautiful city where I get to see sunsets like this. I'm grateful to not have to be in places where I have to starve or fight or scrounge for my food, and that I don't have to worry about whether or not bombs are being dropped on me or whether or not a family member is dead or not. I'm glad that although injured, I actually have every tool and limb in my body. I don't think I have any tools in my body. I don't know why I said that, but that all being said, yeah, everything is good. Everything is pretty good, man. I'm still on the way, kind of waiting for these interviews to happen, or interview to happen, and yeah, man, everything's, I guess, solid. Just got to find a way to sort of deal with that void. So until next time.